What happens when you laugh at someone just because of the uniform they wear? When you assume the person delivering your lunch couldn't possibly be the one funding your next paycheck? Today's story takes place in the sleek glass halls of the world's most advanced private space agency. A place filled with engineers, billion-dollar rockets, and egos just as large. A young woman walks in with 2 boxes of pizza and walks out owning the entire launch facility. This isn't just about rockets. It's about how far prejudice can go and how fast karma can bring it down. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because this story will leave you weightless. The Helix Aerospace Complex sat just outside of Mojave Desert, a sleek stretch of glass and steel rising from the sand like something out of a sci-fi movie. You wouldn't know it from the outside, but inside, this was the future. Private rockets, quantum propulsion, AI-assisted guidance systems. It was where the smartest people in the world came to change the way humans reach the stars. And right in the heart of it all, the control center buzzed with pressure. People in lab coats shouted numbers. Engineers squinted at code on 12 monitor setups. Investors in suits strolled through like they owned the place. They didn't, but they thought they did. One of them, a mid-30s tech bro named Carson Hale, leaned back in his ergonomic chair, tossing a stress ball and pretending he was doing something important. He wore a Helix Aerospace polo shirt, like he was part of the engineering team. He wasn't. He was part of the funding group from a firm called Orion Ventures, a group that had invested big into Helix's newest Mars engine prototype. So now, Carson walked around like he was some kind of god. Cocky, loud, fake smart. You know the type. Listen, he was saying to a small crowd of junior interns. This whole operation, it's basically happening because of me. No one corrected him, not because they believed it, but because people like Carson were dangerous if you crossed them. He could recommend you for promotion, or bury you under 5 years of silence. So they nodded, smiled. He basked in it. And then the door opened. A girl in a red hoodie and baseball cap walked in carrying 2 pizza boxes. Oil-stained jeans. Plain black sneakers. No badge. No clearance tag. She looked completely out of place. Carson scoffed instantly. A delivery goes to the back entrance. She stopped, looked around, then checked her phone. Order says Conference Bay 3. This is a restricted area, he said louder, like he was on security detail. You're probably lost. She held up the phone. I was told to bring it here. Someone from the lab peeked out. Oh, yeah, that's for the propulsion team. They're in final testing and didn't want to step out. Carson looked offended. We don't just let anyone walk in here. This isn't a pizza joint. The girl raised an eyebrow. You the front desk now. Laughter broke out from the lab guys. Carson's face turned red. You know what? Never mind. Leave it there. I'll make sure they get it. I was told to hand it to someone directly. Well, I'm telling you to hand it to me. She looked at him, long and slow, then set the boxes on the nearest table. No problem, she said. Just wanted to see how things ran around here. You mean other than better than your local Domino's? Carson muttered under his breath. She smiled, didn't say anything, just turned, walked back toward the door. And as she reached it, she looked back over her shoulder. I'll be seeing you, Carson. He blinked. Wait, how do you know my name? But she was already gone. That should have been the end of it. But people noticed, especially the interns, especially the lead engineer, Dr. Mariella Choi, who'd watched the whole thing from her corner desk. She turned to her assistant. Pull up today's visitor list. Security clearance entries. The assistant typed, and then froze. No way, she whispered. What? Mariella leaned in. The name on the delivery pass? It wasn't a DoorDash driver. It's listed as external VIP observer. Mariella blinked. What's the name? The assistant turned the monitor. And there it was. Amara Lynn. A name Mariella hadn't heard in years, but one she recognized instantly. Because a decade ago, Amara Lynn was the girl who dropped out of Stanford after 2 years, disappeared from the tech scene, and refused every media request after her first quantum AI patent made waves in aerospace simulation models. She was called the mind that could rewrite orbital propulsion. Then she vanished. Until now. Meanwhile, Carson was still gloating in the lobby. People like that don't get how serious this place is, he told anyone who would listen. No idea who they're talking to. He didn't notice that the building had started to buzz in a different way. That quiet hum that came right before something big dropped. Across the hall, in the executive boardroom, something was happening. The head of Helix Aerospace, CEO Nora Kim, stood at the long glass table, surrounded by shareholders. "This isn't a routine update," she said. "The individual who just entered our facility is not here to deliver food." The investors looked confused. She is the newest majority shareholder of Helix Aerospace. Silence. Complete, total, stunned silence. Carson, still standing in the hallway, laughed when he overheard it. "Wait, what?" He stepped in. "Sorry, did you just say the pizza girl owns this place?" Nora looked straight at him. "I said Amara Lynn, founder of Lintech Labs and inventor of our propulsion simulation algorithm, now owns 62% of Helix Aerospace after a private acquisition finalized last night." Carson stood still, frozen. She has chosen to observe the company anonymously before deciding the next phase of restructuring. He blinked. Nora continued, "And I strongly advise everyone in this room, and outside of it, to reflect on how they treat people who walk in quietly." In the lab wing, Mariella closed her laptop. She smiled. A quiet smile. The interns whispered to each other. "She's the owner now. Of the whole thing. Dude, Carson is so screwed." And down in the parking lot, Amara Lynn sat on the hood of her car, pizza bag in the passenger seat, looking up at the stars she used to dream about. She checked her phone. One message. From the board. "Ready to step in?" She smiled to herself. Not yet. Let them sweat. Let the truth spread on its own. Some lessons teach themselves. And hers was just beginning. By noon the next day, the name Amara Lynn had spread through Helix Aerospace like wildfire. It wasn't just gossip. It was whispers in the elevator, Slack messages with fire emojis, mid-meeting side glances, engineers pretending to work, eyes glued to silent browser tabs with her profile pulled up. The girl in the hoodie with the pizza box wasn't just some eccentric billionaire. She was the tech world's ghost story come true. She hadn't given a public interview in 8 years, refused every award, turned down acquisition offers from Google, SpaceX, and even Helix themselves. And now, she owned them. Carson Hale didn't take it well. He hadn't slept much. He stayed up scrolling through forums, watching clips from her old TEDx talk, reading headlines like, "The pizza girl who owns a rocket company. She disappeared from Silicon Valley. Now she owns the sky." His name hadn't shown up in the articles. Not yet. But his face had been in the security footage. Right next to her. Every second of their exchange yesterday recorded. Interns had screen capped it. Memes were being made. He became a TikTok punchline overnight. POV. When you flex on someone who's literally your boss. Caption. Bro told the CEO to use the backdoor skull. One post had over 3.7 million views by morning. He tried to report it to HR. HR had laughed. Quietly, of course. At 10:34 a.m., Carson walked into the executive floor, trying to act like everything was normal. But nothing was. People didn't make eye contact with him anymore. They made way. Some out of awkwardness. Some out of pity. He stepped into a meeting late and tried to act casual. "Morning," he muttered, taking a seat. No one responded. The room was already focused on the giant screen at the front, where Nora Kim, Helix's CEO, stood beside a slide that read, "Strategic Restructuring Under New Ownership." Her voice was calm but firm. "We are no longer operating under venture pressure. No more short-term PR stunts. No more cutting corners for quarterly reports. The room stayed quiet. All engineering departments will report directly to a new oversight board. Amara Lynn has requested a full internal audit of management decisions, especially relating to employee treatment, dismissed ideas, and rejected proposals. Carson felt his stomach twist. He recognized that language. They weren't just reviewing budgets. They were reviewing behavior. He raised his hand. Sorry, just to clarify. What kind of proposals are we talking about? Nora turned to him. Any that were dismissed without review. So, like all of them. No, she said, eyes steady. Just the ones you personally shut down. At 11:15 a.m., Carson got an internal message from corporate ethics. Please join us for a brief review of your interaction with Ms. Lynn during her entrance visit. Meeting room 7B. 12 o'clock sharp. He froze. 12 o'clock. Just over 30 minutes. Meanwhile, on the lower floors, the energy was electric. Not fear, excitement. For the first time in months, ideas were being pulled out of junk folders and reviewed seriously. A propulsion model that had been shelved by Carson 2 quarters ago, suddenly approved for trial. A junior software engineer was pulled into a private meeting and asked, "Did Carson ever dismiss your project without review?" Suddenly, the people at the bottom were being listened to. Really listened to. And they all knew why. Because she was watching. Amara Lynn hadn't reappeared in the building. But that made it worse. Because no one knew when she would. Every person you walked past could be her assistant. Every email you sent might end up on her desk. Every word you spoke could be part of the restructuring file. It wasn't just a vibe shift. It was a power shift. At 12 o'clock sharp, Carson walked into room 7B. Inside, a woman from ethics, a silent HR observer, and a screen showing playback of his exchange with Amara at the lobby. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't accuse him of anything. They just watched, paused, replayed. One line. Try the back in trance. Would you say that's a standard way of addressing visitors? I didn't know who she was. But would you speak that way to someone in a suit? Silence. Would you speak that way to a male investor? More silence. The HR rep tapped a key. Another video came up. Different day. Different employee. Carson speaking over a junior female engineer during a project review. Dismissing her idea before she finished. Who gave you the authority to make that call? The ethics officer asked. He tried to explain. I wasn't trying to be rude, I just. Pattern recognition doesn't require intent, she said flatly. Ms. Lynn is reviewing all management roles next week. We'll be in touch. The meeting ended. No hugs. No handshakes. Just silence and the sound of his career unraveling. Elsewhere in the building, Amara Lynn finally walked through the back door. No press. No entourage. Just her and a simple messenger bag. She walked straight into the old engine room, where 3 interns were working on a test rig that had been collecting dust for months. They looked up. One of them gasped. Shoo, she said, smiling. Let's build something. By the end of the week, Carson Hale was bleeding influence. Meetings were happening without him. Projects he used to control were now being run by junior staff, with better results. His name had gone from lead investor contact to problem flagged. He watched it happen in real time. Emails he sent were left unread. Slack messages ignored. Doors didn't open for him like they used to. Even worse, he overheard people in the cafe whisper his name like it was a warning. He was the guy who mocked her at the front desk, right? She was holding pizza. He was holding his ego. I heard he's on the chopping block. No one said it to his face. But that was the point. You didn't have to hit a man directly when the whole system just stopped holding him up. Still, Carson wasn't the type to go down quiet. At 2:13 p.m. on Thursday, he walked straight into the executive wing and asked to see CEO Nora Kim. She wasn't in, so he went around her, straight to a board member, a gray-haired man named Oliver Bray, who had once praised Carson's aggressive strategy for raising investor engagement. Carson leaned in. You have to stop this. Oliver looked up. Stop what? This witch hunt. This power grab. I've been with Helix since the first funding round. Oliver raised a brow. You've been with Orion Ventures, not Helix. Same thing. No, Oliver said. Not anymore. Carson sat forward. She's killing the culture here. You mean the culture where your voice mattered more than engineers? I made deals happen. You made noise, Oliver said calmly. She builds engines. You build distractions. Carson's face hardened. So that's it. You're with her now. Oliver closed his folder. I'm with whoever's building the future. And right now it's not you. That night, Carson did something stupid. Desperate stupid. He called a contact in tech media, someone he'd leaked stories to in the past. Said he had dirt, a secret about the new owner. Something big. The next morning, an anonymous post appeared on a major tech blog. Who is Amara Lynn really? Sources say the pizza billionaire may not be who she claims. Questions arise around the legitimacy of her stake in Helix Aerospace. Within hours, the internet was buzzing. Again. But this time, the tone was different. Because within minutes of the article going live, Helix issued a press release. All ownership records have been public for years. The claim is baseless, and the source is known. Further, Ms. Lynn has authorized the release of her complete investment timeline, including patent history, acquisition terms, and public filings. Then came the twist. We will also be initiating legal action against the individual responsible for this false report. The next sentence hit like a bomb. The source has been confirmed as Carson Hale, formerly of Orion Ventures. Formerly, as in no longer employed. The moment the press release hit Twitter, the story flipped instantly. Investor tries to smear Helix owner, backfires in 24 hours. Don't come for Amara Lynn unless she sends for you. Another bro goes boom. Tech karma served hot. Within hours, Carson's LinkedIn was flooded. Hundreds of comments. Most mocking. Biggest L of 2025. Man got humbled by a hoodie. Imagine torching your career over a pizza delivery. It didn't stop there. Orion Ventures issued a statement. We have officially cut ties with Mr. Hale. His actions do not reflect the integrity of our firm or our values. Translation. He was gone. For good. Back at Helix, Amara didn't hold a press conference. Didn't issue a fiery clapback. She just walked the floor of the lower labs, asking questions, taking notes, remembering names. That afternoon, she walked into a project room full of junior engineers and said, "Who here had an idea that got shot down?" Every hand went up. She smiled. Good. Let's dig them up. Meanwhile, Carson sat alone in his apartment. No calls. No offers. Just a blinking cursor on a resignation letter that no one asked for. His career wasn't just over. It had become a cautionary tale. And the worst part? He did it to himself. All because he couldn't see past a hoodie and a pizza box. All because he thought power came from sounding important, not being important. By Friday, Helix had stabilized. The mood had changed. People felt seen, heard, and when Amara passed them in the hallway, no one flinched. They nodded, smiled, not out of fear, out of respect, because real leadership doesn't need to announce itself. It just shows up, quietly, thoughtfully, and completely in control. By Monday morning, Helix Aerospace was no longer just a tech company. It was a headline. Amara Lynn reshapes the culture of power at Helix. The woman who took down toxic tech without saying a word. Quiet billionaire's silent revolution. For everyone inside the company, it felt like a shift. Not just in leadership, but in philosophy. Ideas that once sat in forgotten inboxes were now getting reviewed in real meetings. Employees who had been invisible were being invited to pitch. But even as the culture changed, one big question remained. Why now? Why had Amara Lynn come back after disappearing for nearly a decade? Why choose Helix? And why pretend to be a delivery girl? The answer came that afternoon. Not with fireworks, but with a simple internal email. Subject line: a story I owe you. From Amara Lynn. The email wasn't long, just a few paragraphs, but it cracked the floor under everyone's feet. 10 years ago, I applied to intern at Helix Aerospace. I was 21, bright-eyed, obsessed with propulsion theory. I submitted my resume 3 times. Never heard back. On my 4th attempt, I got an interview. I came in with a hand-built model I designed using an early version of what would later become the LinSim engine framework. The room laughed. One man said I should be in marketing, not engineering. Another suggested I was wasting my time chasing physics I didn't understand. One of them was named Carson Hale. I walked out of that interview, sat in my car and cried. Then I drove home, rewrote my simulation engine, and launched LinTech Labs in silence. The rest, you already know. I didn't come back for revenge. I came back to build a version of Helix I once dreamed of working for. One that doesn't care how you dress, where you're from, or whether you bring in pizza or patents. One that listens. If you're reading this, just know, your ideas matter. And you're exactly who I came back for. Amara. When the email hit, everything froze. You could feel it. Across labs, lounges, office desks. It was like someone had turned down the gravity. Because suddenly, the hoodie, the silence, the pizza box, it all made sense. She hadn't come in disguise. She came as the version of herself that was once dismissed. She didn't show up as a billionaire. She showed up as the 21-year-old intern they didn't want, and gave them a second chance to get it right. That evening, in the design lab, Amara stood quietly while a group of engineers pitched a propulsion model that had been shelved for 3 years. It had been shot down under Carson's watch for being unrealistic. She listened to every word, asked questions, took notes, and when the engineer finished, she nodded once. I believe in this. Let's fund it. The room lit up, not just with excitement, with relief. They were no longer being tolerated. They were being trusted. Across the street, Carson Hale sat in a downtown cafe, scrolling through his phone. He read the email 3 times. His name, in it, burned into company history, and not as a visionary, as a warning. The coffee in front of him had gone cold. He looked up at the TV on the wall, muted, playing a business news segment. Amara Lynn, the silent power behind tech's most dramatic culture shift. There she was, on screen, smiling gently. No makeup, no hype, just the girl he told to use the back door. The internet had turned her into a legend. Fan edits, Reddit deep dives, inspirational quote threads. They tried to humiliate her. So she bought the building. Don't tell someone they don't belong in a room when they own the blueprints. And the biggest quote of all, the final line from her email. You're exactly who I came back for. That one hit like poetry, like a promise, like justice wrapped in kindness. Back at Helix, a new sign had quietly gone up in the lobby. A small plaque, next to the front desk. It read, in memory of all the ideas that were laughed at, and the people who brought them back. Yell. Within 24 hours of Amara's email going out, the story left the walls of Helix. It spilled into the press, into social media, into every podcast, tech panel, and business school classroom in the country. The rebirth of a tech giant. How Amara Lynn silently took over Helix Aerospace. Humiliated at 21. Billionaire at 31. Back to rewrite the rules. Power in a hoodie. The quiet revolution of Amara Lynn. News outlets couldn't get enough of her. Someone recognized him in the interview. The story ended with, candidate left awkwardly. No follow-up needed. It became a meme. No follow-up needed. People printed it on office mugs across tech. He wasn't a villain anymore. Just a cautionary tale. And that might have been worse. Back at Helix, Amara stepped onto the roof alone one evening. The sky was clear. Stars looked like pinholes punched into black velvet. She remembered standing there 10 years ago, heartbroken, rejected, convinced she'd never get a shot. Now, she stood there as the owner of the building. She pulled out her phone. One unread message from a young coder named Malik. "Hey, I got laughed at in a meeting yesterday, but your story reminded me why I'm still here. Just wanted to say thanks." She replied with just 4 words. "Keep building. I see you." Before she left the roof, she pulled a small marker from her pocket, walked to a panel near the maintenance door, wrote a single line. No name, no date, just this: "If you were told you don't belong, you're already on the right floor." And just like that, she was gone. Not out of the company, just out of the spotlight. She went back to her code, her research, her silence, because Amara Lynn never needed to be the loudest in the room. She just needed to make sure that everyone else had a chance to speak. Final message: never judge someone by their uniform. Never mistake humility for insignificance. And never forget, the quiet ones aren't here to follow the rules. They're here to rewrite them. The end.